That tells you the order that you should be going in to solve these problems once you have your numbers plugged in. Okay, so here I've plugged in -2 for A. That's where that -2 comes from. Then it says -2, which is right here. And this 2 is right next to the B. That should tell your brain that that's multiplication. So I'll put that in parentheses right here. And I'm actually going to erase a little bit of that sign so you can tell that it's negative. That's a -1/2 right there. And then all of it is cubed. So order of operations. Parentheses is first. That's what that P stands for. Okay, so we're going to do what's in parentheses first. I'm going to go ahead and multiply these two numbers. So I'm just going to copy down the first part of this problem, which is -2. And then we have -2 times -1/2. A negative times a negative is a positive. So we're going to put that right there, the plus sign. And then -2 times -1/2 is +1. Okay, close parentheses and copy our exponent down, which is 3. I'm going to turn the chat box on. Remember, this is just for things that relate to what we're doing right now. If not, I'm going to have to turn it back off. So here's what we have so far. We still have parentheses, so we want to solve that before we move past the P. We have -2 plus +1, which is just going to give us -1 and cubed. Now we're moving on to exponents. This 3 is an exponent. That tells you how many times you multiply this number by itself. So we have -1 times -1 times -1. Okay, -1 times -1 is +1. And then +1 times -1 is -1. So that would be your final answer. Good, Wesley. Yes, -1. So make sure that on your paper you circle your final answer, which is -1. Just make sure that when you're doing these exponents, you write it out, your number, because if you just tried to do this in your head, you might think that would be +1, but it is not. -1. I'm going to leave it right there for just a minute. I know you guys are copying. So again, the first step was to plug in these values for A and B in our original problem, which is what I did here. Then I multiplied these two, -2 times -1/2, and I got +1. That's where that +1 comes from. The rest of this is just copied down from up here. Then you do what's in parentheses. -2 plus +1 is -1. And then the exponent tells you how many times you multiply this number by itself. So I did that right here 3 times. -1 times -1 times -1 is -1. But the second 2 is positive. Hassan, I don't know what you're talking about. Right here? No, that's negative. You see this negative sign right here? -2 times B, which is -1/2. Yep. Yes, when A equals -2. Right there. That's where that -2 came from right here. And right here. Hassan is both. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on. Remember, this is recorded. So if you need to go back and watch the recording after class, it'll be available like maybe 30 minutes after the class is over with. Okay, so that would be number 1 on your quiz, or similar to number 1 because there are 3 different variations on your actual quiz. And if at the top of your paper, if you want to write 4.04 quiz, just so when you're looking back, you know what quiz this is for. All right, this is number 2. You can go ahead and write down the problem. It is open parentheses, j times k minus 1 close parentheses divided by j. And it's telling you that j is equal to 4, or I'm sorry, negative 4, and k is equal to negative 0.9. So the first thing we want to do again is plug in those values for those letters. Okay. So we have open parentheses, and I'm going to do a smaller parentheses for j times k, which is going to be negative 4 times negative 0.9, close the small parentheses. Then it says minus 1 in our original problem, close the big parentheses, divided by j, and j is equal to negative 4. So before you start solving, you might want to remind yourself of the order of operations. So I'm just going to write PEMDAS up here at the top. PEMDAS. Remember, parentheses comes first. Okay, so when I'm looking at this, we've got some double parentheses. So this is what we need to do first because it's parentheses inside of parentheses. So we're going to solve that first. Negative 4 times, that's my dog, Hayden. Negative 4 times negative 0.9. We know a negative times a negative is a positive. And negative 4 times 0.9 is going to give you 3.6. And bring down the rest of the equation, which is minus 1, close parentheses, divided by 4. Okay, now we still have parentheses to do here, so we'll solve that first. 3.6 minus 1 is 2.6. And then copy the rest of your problem down, which is divided by 4. And then just solve that. 2.6 divided by, negative 4, not just 4, is going to be negative 0.65. Y'all see how easy it is to forget those negative signs? And that would be your final answer for that one. Numbers 1, 2, and 3 are pretty easy, but 4 and 5 get a little more tricky. So if you're thinking, oh, I can do that, this is easy peasy. Good, just wait until we get to number 4 and 5. It gets a little tricky. You guys can still do it. It's just tricky. Math is your easiest subject. Interesting. That's great. Chairs, that don't have anything to do with math. Yeah, Phoebe, they have to start using letters for variables when there's an unknown. All right, a couple more seconds and we're going to move on. How did you get the multiplication symbol in the problem again? So right here in the original problem, Hassan, J and K are right next to each other, so that tells you that they're being multiplied by each other. All right, let's move on to number 3. How did you divide 2.6 divided by 4? I typed it in my calculator. Yep, I just typed it in my calculator. If it doesn't have anything between them, it's multiplication. Exactly, Wesley, yes. When 2 letters or a number in a letter are right beside each other, that tells you they're being multiplied. All right, let's go to number 3. Number 3 looks crazy, but I promise you it's not a very hard problem. You just plug in your values again. So A equals 1 7/8, B equals -1, C equals -4. So let's just plug those values in. And y'all, when you see these bars that are straight up and down, that means the absolute value, which just means you ignore the signs. So whether it's negative or positive, it doesn't matter. It's just positive. That's what those bars mean. But this has the negative sign outside the bars. So whatever this digit is, whatever A plus B is going to be negative. And we'll look at that in just a second. So we've got our negative sign, the absolute value bar, and then A, which is 1 7/8, plus B, which is -1. And then another absolute value bar on the top. And then on the bottom of the fraction is 2 minus C, and C is -4. And so now we can solve. We don't have any parentheses. I mean, I put brackets around -4, but there's nothing going on inside of those. There's no exponents. So we're just going to solve multiplication and division first. The 2 looks like a Z. Well, Z's are not curved at the top. Okay, anyways, we'll do the top first. That's okay. And not much needs to go on right here. If you're just adding a -1 to this, it's going to cancel out this positive 1 that's in 1 1/7. So you'll just be left with 7/8 when you take away 1. So on the top, you have the negative outside, the absolute value bars, 7/8, and the absolute value bars. And all that means is it's a -7/8 on top. Okay. On bottom, you have 2 minus -4. Well, if you're subtracting a negative, you're really just adding a positive. Think of it on a number line. So 2 plus 4 is 6. And so what this really says is -7/8 divided by 6. Okay. And we don't want to divide that. We would rather multiply. So we're going to use the keep, change, flip rule, KCF. And we're going to do keep 7/8 change to multiplication and flip. So right now 6 is the same thing as 6 over 1. If you flip that, it would be 1 over 6. Okay, so our new problem is negative 7/8 times 1 over 6. And now we can just multiply straight across. We have a negative times a positive, which is a negative. 7 times 1 is 7 on top. 8 times 6 is 48 on the bottom. You cannot simplify that anymore. So your final answer is negative 7 over 48. Y'all remember, if you're not talking about math, don't type in the chat box or I'm going to delete it. / turn the chat box off if it gets to be too much. And I hate turning the chat box off. So don't make me do it. Don't make me do it. We've got 2 more left. Numbers 4 and 5. 4 is pretty easy. 5 is a little bit tricky. I will just be honest. Good, Lemuel. Yeah, you can definitely come back and watch the recording after class is over if you want to go back over it. And this part of this unit, this quiz, is the hardest of the whole unit. So, to me. So yes, y'all just make sure that when you're getting your final answer, even though you could type in your calculator 7 divided by 48 and get a decimal, your answer choices are not in decimal form for these questions. They're all going to be some type of fraction, either a regular fraction or a mixed number. So if you have a fraction, if you have a decimal, you're going to need to put that into fraction form for these types of problems, if it's at the end. All right, let's move on to 4. Preston will be going over the study guide for the unit test this Thursday in our big class. So make sure you come to that. Okay, so here is 4. We've got w squared over x minus 3 divided by 10 times z. So we need to plug in all of these values. W equals negative 6, x equals 1.2, and z equals negative 6 over 7. So let's plug those numbers in. I'm going to open my parentheses. We have w squared, and w equals negative 6. So we've really got negative 6 squared over x, which is 1.2, minus 3. Close parentheses. Copy down the rest of your problem, divided by 10 times z, and z is equal to negative 6 over 7. Now, this looks crazy, I know. However, if you take it step by step, it's not that bad. It's just a lot of steps. So remind yourself of PEMDAS. I'll write it up here again. PEMDAS. All right, so we need to do what's in parentheses first, which is all of this. However, we can't start subtracting anything until we figure out this fraction. So we need to do -6 squared first. -6 squared is just -6 times -6, which is positive 36 over 1.2 minus 3, and then you copy down the rest of your problem, divided by 10 times -6 over 7. Okay, so now we can solve that fraction slash division problem. 36 over 1.2 is what? What's 36 divided by 1.2? Somebody tell me in the chat box. Type it in your calculator. 36 divided by 1.2. No, it's not 3.3. Yes, 30. Okay, so 30 minus 3. And I'm not going to copy the rest of the problem right now because we can just solve this. What is 30 minus 3? 27. Very good. So that goes in parentheses. And then copy the rest of your problem. Divided by 10 times -6 over 7. Okay, so now this is our number sentence. 27 divided by 10 times -6 over 7. PEMDAS tells me that multiplication and division are next. And when you have multiple of multiplication and division, you just go in order from left to right. Okay, so we're going to do 27 divided by 10. Somebody tell me what that equals. Yep, 27 divided by 10 is going to give you 2.7. Or what mixed number would that be? Because remember what I told you, you don't want to use decimals here because your answers are not going to be in decimal form. Very good, Wesley. It's going to be 2 7/10. That's what 2.7 is equal to. And then we had it times -6 over 7. Or you can write the x if you would prefer that. Now let's just multiply. We have a positive times a negative. And I'm going to write this way as well. 2 7/10 as an improper fraction would just be 27 over 10. I just want to make sure that y'all are understanding where I'm getting these numbers from. And 27 times 6, what is that equal to? And we know our answer is negative. What's 27 times 6? Yes, 162 on the top. And then on the bottom, what is 10 times 7? Good, Wesley, 70. Okay, so your answer is -162 over 70. However, your test or your quiz wants it in mixed number form, not in improper fraction, so you need to divide. So we're going to divide 162 by 70. And I'm just going to go ahead and put my negative sign up here because my fraction was negative. 70 can go into 162 2 times. That would give you 140. And when you subtract that, you're left with 22. So your mixed number would be -2 and 22 over 70. Can you simplify 22 over 70? Yes, you can. You can divide the top and the bottom by 2. And when you do that, you're going to get -2 and 11 over 35. Circle that. That would be your final answer. Right, Deja? I know. That's a lot. But it's not hard. It's just a lot of steps. Luckily, I think there's only one on your test like this. Well, Phoebe, that's why you should be writing it down. Exactly, Wesley. Take notes. We've got one more. I'm going to leave this up for just a second. And then we'll do number 5, and that will be our last one for today. Well, Deja, the next one is similar. So try to keep up with that one. Yep, Hayden, we got one more. I was just trying to let everybody get that copy down. All right, let's go to the last one, number 5. Again, we need to plug in these numbers. A equals -2/5 and B equals -8.25. So let's go ahead and plug those numbers into our equation. So remember, when you see a number and a letter squished right next to each other, that's multiplication. So I'm going to open my big bracket and then drew a smaller bracket for 2a, which is just 2 times a, which is -2/5. Close the bracket, minus 1/3. Close the big bracket, divided by b, which is -8.25 over 15. Yeah, Phoebe, exactly. We're going to have to move. We're going to have to make this decimal into a fraction in just a second. But 8.25 is not the same thing as 8 over 25 at all. So we'll look at that in just a second, but we don't need to look at it yet because we need to do what's in parentheses first if we're following PEMDAS. So remember, you can write yourself a little note at the top for order of operations. Excuse my bad handwriting. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we need to do, let me think here, is multiply those fractions that's in the both of the parentheses. So this is 2. I'm going to erase that x because I'm just going to put the multiplication sign as a dot so we don't get confused. 2 times negative 2.5 is negative 4 over 5. So remember, any whole number you can just put over 1 and solve that way. So that's where this is coming from. Negative 4 over 5. And then you've got minus 1 over 3, close parentheses, divided by this negative 8.25. We need to go ahead and change. Okay, so I'm going to make a note on mine, and you can do yours as well. Convert negative 8.25 to a fraction. Okay, so to do that, we know that 8.25 is the same thing as negative 8 and 25 over 100. However, we want a fraction, not a mixed number. So we just need to multiply 8 times 100, which would be 800. And then plus 25 would be 825 over 100. And we can simplify that by dividing by 4. And that would give us negative 33 over 4. So that's what we need to work with. Okay, so over here, I'm going to put on the top negative 33 over 4 over 15 from our original problem. Right here. So all of this is just equal to 8.25. So negative 33 over 4 is equal to negative 8.25. Okay, so now we can keep going. If we want to do what's in parentheses, we need to subtract, but we cannot subtract until both of our fractions have the same denominator. So that's why this problem actually takes a long time, because you got to find the same denominator, which you really just need to ask yourself, what would be the common denominator for 5 and 3? It would be 15. And then you ask yourself, what do I multiply 3 by to get 15? What do I multiply 5 by to get 15? And the 3 you would multiply by 5. Exactly, Phoebe. And the 5 you would multiply by 3. And you need to do the same to the top and the bottom. Okay, so when we do that, 4 times 3 is 12 on the top right here, and 15 on the bottom. Over here for this fraction, 1 times 5 is 5 on the top and 15 on the bottom. Now we don't need to write down the rest of this right now. We'll just solve this. So if you have negative minus a positive, what are you actually doing? You could keep change. You're going to keep negative 12 over 15, change to a plus, change to a negative. So you're really just adding two negatives. Okay, so that equals negative 17 over 15. And then we're going to copy down the rest of our problem. I'm going to do it in a different color just so y'all know what I'm doing over here. So now our problem reads negative 17 over 15. And that was inside the parentheses, divided by negative 33 over 4. over 15. So remember, when it's over each other like that, that's actually a division problem. So this is actually saying negative 33 over 4 divided by 15. But remember, we don't want to divide. We want to multiply when it comes to fractions. So we can use keep, change, flip right here. And we would keep negative 33 over 4, change to multiplication, and flip 15 over 1, which becomes 1 over 15. And then multiply that out. We have a negative times a positive, which is a negative. 33 times 1 is 33 on the top. And 4 times 15 is 60 on the bottom. What can we divide 33 and 60 by to simplify? Good, Cruz. Yes, 3. So let's divide both of those by 3. And 33 divided by 3 is 11. What is 60 divided by 3? 20. Very good. Okay. So now we've got this fraction. And we need to go back to our original problem right here. So now we have negative 17 over 15 divided by negative 11 over 20. And this will be the last part. Thank the Lord. I'm going to try to squeeze it in right here. And I'll use a different color. We'll do orange. So now we have, we're going to keep, change, flip again. Bella, give me just a second. We have negative 17 over 15 divided by negative 11 over 20. And we're going to keep, change, flip. That gives us negative 17 over 15. We're going to keep that. Change to multiplication. Change to or flip this fraction. And it becomes 20 over 11. Negative 20 over 11. All right, so let's multiply that out. We've got a negative times a negative, so we know our answer is going to be positive. 17 times 20 is what? Good, Cruz. 340. Over 15 times 11, which is what? Good, 165. Now, if it asked for our answer in an improper fraction, we could stop there, but we need a mixed number, so we need to divide for our last thing. So 165 can go into 340 2 times. That would give you 330. When you subtract that, you're left with 10. So your final answer, well, almost final answer, would be 2 and 10 over 165. However, you can simplify that by dividing by 5. And I'm going to write your final answer in blue down here. It would be 2 and 2 over 33.